6 weeks before the 2008 Beijing Olympics, the independent Chinese TV channel NTD TV that broadcasts free information to China was suddenly cut off. Since the channel, unlike mainland media, is independent and not subject to censorship by the Chinese Communist Party, many believed that the shutdown was caused by pressure from the Chinese regime, fearing an alternative voice during the Olympics. NTD TV was founded in 2001 by overseas Chinese. According to the channel's website, its mission is to provide accurate news and promote traditional Chinese culture. In 2004, NTD TV signed a contract with the French satellite company Eutelsat after many failed attempts with other satellite companies due to interference from the Chinese Communist regime. NTD TV's signal into China was so strong that one only had to install a small satellite dish to receive the broadcast. Zhang Yi has worked as an NTD TV reporter for the last 3 years. She came from China to Sweden in the late 80s to study economics. We met her during the shooting of a news package just outside Stockholm. 5 months have passed since the broadcast into her native China was shut down.
During the SARS epidemic, when I noticed that the NTD TV was the only Chinese language media that is telling how serious the situation is in China. And I wished so intensively that my parents and my relatives and my friends, they could see NTD TV. And then I don't have to call them and to convince them how dangerous things is, in China. And if you can have another media telling you another story, and then you may start thinking.
Eutelsat is a pan-European company with its head office in Paris. After the shutdown of NTD TV's satellite signal into China, supporters of the channel from around the world gathered in front of the Eutelsat building.
I was here on vacation for a few days and was informed that there was this meeting here to defend freedom of speech and freedom of expression, freedom of the press, and I thought it was crucial to come so as to defend this freedom of speech because I was informed that Eutelsat has claimed technical reasons to stop broadcasting NTD TV in China, and I think that this is very dramatic for Chinese people if they can't have a free television.
The official response from Eutelsat is so far only a short written statement on the company webpage, claiming that the reason for the shutdown is a technical problem with one of their transponders.
他既然跟新唐人电台签有合约，然后以这种就是欺诈的手段就是关闭新唐人电台中国大陆的播出，这也是一个非常的卑劣的这种商业行为，毫无信誉的商业行为，也是违背一个职业化的规模化的公司它的作为。在1989年这个镇压之后那么我们看到所有中国官方的媒体呢，都是把这场运动定为由学潮动乱直至反革命暴乱，就是把我们定为一场暴乱。那我们呢，由爱国的学生一夜之间就变成了动乱分子和暴乱分子。特别是在中国大陆，比如说包括8·9，那么他也放了许多原来8·9的一些片子，特别是你们新唐人一些记者，关于我们一些8·9的亲身参与者，比如搞的人杰地灵的这一个系列的节目，把许多真实的历史事实反映出来，效果也很好，很多看了很受感动。还有许多每年就在中国每天都在发生的一些迫害人权的事情。 那么新唐人电视台呢，总是在第一个时间将这些问题呢揭露出来，甚至把很多这个新闻背后的新闻也揭露出来。比如说，我看到他们关于地震的这个瞒报历史真相的这个事实讲出来等等，这些都是中共不喜悦的。特别是他能够用图像的这个方法啊，真实的反映出来，那么中共就会想方设法。
Also participating in the protest is Reporters Without Borders, an independent European organization with the mission to defend freedom of press worldwide. They have been following the development of NTD-TV since its creation in 2001.
So we found interesting that this TV can exist, but at the same time it was obvious that they will be in trouble, and from the beginning they have been in trouble with most of the satellite industry, people refusing to carry the TV, and there had been a very clear answer from different satellite companies that because of the Chinese pressure they cannot get NTD TV on their satellites. They tried to stop the broadcasting in 2005, but NTD TV was able, thanks to the international support and especially Congress support in the US, to put pressure on Eutelsat. And Eutelsat, because it's a business company also, they were afraid to lose more contract than they can win in suppressing NTD TV.
Suspecting the involvement of the Chinese Communist Party behind Eutelsat's shutdown of the NTD-TV satellite signal into China, Reporters Without Borders decide to make their own investigation. What you're about to hear is a reporter making a phone call to the Eutelsat office in Beijing, pretending to be a representative of the propaganda department of the Chinese Communist Party.
你好，
你好，是欧洲卫星驻北京办事处吗？
哎，对，请问您哪里？
啊，我是那个中宣部，我刚才要找你们那个。
哦，对，你稍等啊。
嗯。
哎，您好。
你好。
哎，您好。
你是这个欧洲卫星驻北京办事处这个是吗？
是的。
我想问一下，就是让
能先问一下您是哪里？
哦，对不起。这个我是那个中宣部。
哎。
那个我想问一下，就是你们这个停止发送新唐人电视台的这个卫星信号的这个事情，你们进行的怎么样？
他已经停止了呀。
啊，就是说这个他们在向你们施加压力，就是说你们能顶得住吗？
现在的话还能坚持，因为现在是这顶不住也得顶啊。
那这个停这个新唐人这个信号是你们那个法国的那个总裁决定的？
哇，对，他也来了中国访问了好几次。
那我明白了，就是说这次是因为有这么个电源的这么一个机会，你们主动的就停下来了。
对。
就是然后就是为了就是向我们中国政府表示好意。
友好，对。
I went to the headquarters of Eutelsat and asked for a meeting with the CEO, Mr. Beretta. And then they say he was not in office. Then I say, can I talk to his deputy? And then they say, No, the deputy is also not available, you know. And then I say, any higher manager, I would like to talk to them. And then they asked someone, and then someone came out. And then it turned out that he is the manager of security. Yeah? And so I explained to him what I want. And then he said, you know what, you can write the letter. I promise you, I will give this letter to him. In the letter, basically, what I told Mr. Beretta is, I was telling them that, the Chinese regime is not just a regime in a country where economy has been growing very fast, but this regime has also made China the biggest violation of human rights in the world. So, and then I told them that it is only possible to carry out all this brutal and cruel persecution against Falun Gong, against Tibetans and many other persecuted groups, only by cheating the Chinese people, only by brainwashing the Chinese people. Because after brainwashing, those Chinese people who believe in the propaganda, they think to help the communist regime to persecute Falun Gong, Tibetans, Christian, human rights fighter is a good thing, they think, because they are indoctrinated to become nationalists, and they think they were doing something good for the country. Only they are. And they took the letter, and I remember this manager for security, he promised he will personally hand the letter over to Mr. Beretta when he comes back on the following week. And then he actually said that he will also ask Mr. Beretta to call me the week after. So, and I left my business card with my telephone number and so on. And unfortunately, 2 months and more than 2 months has gone, and I still haven't received a phone call from Mr. Beretta.
Eutelsat has denied the investigation made by Reporters Without Borders. In their response to NTD TV, their vice president writes, "We can't bring back the satellite from outer space, just to show you that the shutdown is due to a technical problem." After the 1st of July, however, there was, once again, free space on the Eutelsat W5 satellite.
C'est que des personnes indépendantes qui suivent les émissions de satellites ont constaté que certains des transpondeurs qui avaient été éteints après l'incident technique de juin ont été éteints, allumés et visiblement ont recommencé à diffuser. Donc s'ils sont réparés, s'ils peuvent fonctionner, ça veut dire qu'ils pourraient de nouveau accueillir NTD-TV.
On the 22nd of October 2008, representatives of NTD-TV held a press conference with 3 members of the European Parliament. They called on Nicolas Sarkozy to address the situation with Eutelsat and to resume NTD-TV's broadcasts to China.
It's a question of self-estimation, because these are our fundamental values, and therefore as Europeans we should defend and maintain them.
And I was present for a debate and took part in it last week in the European Parliament in Strasbourg, where every speaker practically said to Sarkozy, as I did, keep politics out of sport, keep Sarkozy out of Beijing, but also allow Eutelsat, enforce Eutelsat to allow NTD-TV to continue broadcasting into China.
Helga Truppel, one of the participants, also tells of how she was invited to dinner by members of the Chinese Communist Party just a few days before the press conference. They urged her to quit supporting NTD-TV. When she refused, they said that the relationship between the Green Party she represented and China would get worse if she continued her support. October 2008, NTD-TV supporters gather for a press conference outside the well-known Vinci building in France at the Eutelsat annual shareholders meeting. Flyers are distributed to the shareholders to reveal the facts that have surfaced behind the shutdown. Many shareholders state that they support free media and that they want to help NTD resume their broadcasts into mainland China. During the meeting, one of the shareholders asks to have the recorded conversation by Reporters Without Borders explained, but is silenced by the Vice President. At the following shareholders' meeting, the CEO of Eutelsat, Mr. Beretta, can no longer hide the termination of NTD-TV's signal to China and gives a prepared speech to the shareholders. He is questioned several times on the investigation by Reporters Without Borders, but gives very unrelated answers and tries to prevent the questions from being raised.
Je suis révolté sur la façon dont le président a répondu aux deux intervenants, parce qu'il a été absolument nerveux, agressif, il les a menacés, alors que les questions étaient très courtoises. Les questions? Pourquoi la diffusion de la chaîne chinoise, je ne sais plus laquelle, a été interrompue par Eutelsat?
Members of the European Parliament have also tried to get in touch with the president of Eutelsat for an explanation. Swedish MP Goran Lindblad is one of them. He is also a long-term expert on communist regimes.
I sent a letter to the president of Eutelsat. I know they got it, but I have not got any reply. That was in July, right when they had closed the transponder. But there is no reaction from Eutelsat so far to the letter. So we'll try to keep up that pressure also. It is not acceptable when a company that's owned by many European countries act that way in order just to make an extra euro.
In December of 2008, Mr. Beretta was invited by members of the European Parliament to openly discuss the company's termination of NTD-TV's broadcast into China. But Mr. Beretta turned down the invitation.
It was a terrible scandal. I think it is a terrible scandal, and it is the way some companies act in order to make business. And a lot of businessmen try to stay away from politics like the athletes do and say this is up to the politician, but it is not. It is everyone's duty when dealing with the dictatorship to state that we don't like your system. Any information, whether it's a fax, a telephone call, or millions of television viewers, it's a danger, it's a risk to the regime that people get other ideas. Every communist regime wants to filter the information. They could not have a conversation like we are having because that's a danger to the system when people are allowed to think freely.
The press conference held by NTD-TV and the 3 MPs in October 2008 started a growing support for freedom of press and human rights in China among the other members. On January the 15th, 2009, the European Parliament passed a resolution with 400 signatures from MPs calling on Eutelsat to resume the broadcast. At the same time, they once again tried to invite Mr. Beretta to the European Parliament for an open discussion. But Mr. Beretta never showed up.
Is all your day work?
Yes, it's the day, yes. No,
Well, I plan to go home if I look at this. Hi.
Yeah, close the door and walk away.
China is very near my heart. It has been very near my heart all the time. Now that you have a channel to tell the Chinese people what is going on inside China and what is going on outside China and why. I can speak Swedish, I can speak English, I can tell Chinese people what's going on here in Sweden. And mainly, I can be a part of NTD TV that I'm really proud of, because they are recovering the historical facts, and they are also promoting the Chinese traditional culture, the real culture from China, the part of China that every Chinese people should be very proud of.
在中国哈，私自安装这个卫星的接收器是合法的呢，还是不合法的呢？
明令禁止的，是明令是违法的行为啊，轻则政府可以罚款没收，重则呢可以判劳教和蹲监狱的。现在也有不敢安装的，也有安装的，或者不被发现的，用比较些隐秘的手法安一些的，或者安在自己的后墙里、后院里头，或者安在阳台或者房顶不被人发觉的地方等等。要安这样东西的人太多了，就是人们有这种获取更多信息、获取被封锁了的信息的这种强烈的愿望。用我接触到曾经跟我谈话的一个中共为中共搞宣传的一位干部的话讲，他说如果真正做到仅仅做到新闻自由、新闻开放这一点，就其他都不动，就是仅仅做到新闻开放这一点，中共连3个月都出不去，他这样的政权。
Being Chinese in a Western society, you want China to be really strong, to be really nice. You give a nice picture to the whole world. And then this true story is not. Before the Olympic Games, there were so many critics about China, the human rights issues. Chinese people, they got this message too. But the difference is that they didn't know why the Westerner people were protesting against the Olympic torch. They know that the Westerner, they were protesting, but they didn't know why. So the message they got, it was like the Westerner against China to hold Olympic game. So in that way, if you talk more like the human rights issue in China, they didn't like it. They want to feel proud of the nation.
They're not allowed to report about ethnic problems like in the Tibet or in Xinjiang, for instance, where the Uyghurs are very heavily suppressed. They're not supposed to report about unofficial religions which are not allowed in China. And of course they're not allowed to report about Falun Gong or about Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch or other international human rights organizations. So human rights as such are sensitive issues and they should not be reported and not written about in Chinese newspapers.
In the Chinese Communist Party, their campaign against Falun Gong, has been driven for almost 10 years now. And if you allowed information, well, you can allow the true information what Falun Gong is and organ transplantations, for instance. I think the government will not be there. The Chinese Communist Party, they will lose their power from the people quite right away. Why? Because their lie was too huge.